All right, let's dive into a story that honestly sounds like it's straight out of a political thriller. We're talking about the Watergate Scandal, a story of how a single break-in managed to bring down a U.S. president and, really, change American politics forever. I mean, seriously, think about that for a second. The most powerful person on the planet forced out of office. How does something that monumental even happen? You might think it would take something huge, right? A massive global war, some kind of catastrophic national crisis. But nope, that's not what happened here. And it wasn't the voters either. This wasn't a case of being defeated at the ballot box. This came from something else entirely, something brewing inside the White House itself.
Get this, the whole chain of events that led to a presidential downfall, it all started with a simple, almost sloppy break-in. It sounds completely unbelievable, but I promise you, it's exactly what went down.
So, let's start at the very beginning. It all kicks off with a crime that the White House tried to brush off as nothing, but it would end up unraveling an entire presidency. Okay, so picture this. June 17th, 1972. 5 men get caught red-handed inside the Democratic Party's headquarters. They're trying to plant bugs, spy on the political opposition. Pretty illegal, but on the surface, maybe not a world-ending event. But here is where the plot thickens. Investigators pretty quickly realize, hey, these aren't just some random burglars. They have direct ties to President Richard Nixon's administration. And that discovery, well, that was just the very, very tip of the iceberg. With that first thread pulled, the whole conspiracy started to come apart at the seams. And a huge part of that was thanks to 2 really tenacious journalists who just refused to let the story go. So you've got this classic showdown. On one side, you have Bob Woodward and Carl Bernstein from the Washington Post, just digging and digging for the truth. And on the other side, you have the White House, flat out denying everything, saying, nope, nothing to do with us. The stage was set. As Woodward and Bernstein started to follow the money, trying to figure out who paid for this whole operation, they kept bumping into this really weird acronym that seemed to be at the center of everything. CREEP. CREEP. It actually stood for the Committee to Re-elect the President. I know, you can't make this stuff up. This wasn't some shadowy fringe group. This was Nixon's official campaign organization. And the cash that paid the burglars? It was traced directly back to them. The connection was suddenly very, very real. Okay, so with the cat out of the bag, the focus completely shifts. It's not about the break-in anymore. Now it's about the frantic, desperate scramble to hide the truth. The White House went into full-on damage control. But listen, this wasn't just spinning the news. This was an active, illegal cover-up. We're talking officials lying to investigators, key witnesses being pressured to keep their mouths shut, and evidence being hidden or even destroyed. They weren't just denying a crime, they were committing brand new ones. And all of this boiled down to the one question that was hanging over the entire country. Was this just a few rogue employees, or did the president himself know about it? More importantly, did he order the cover-up? And then a bombshell. I mean, a movie plot-level bombshell. Investigators discovered that President Nixon had a secret taping system in the Oval Office. He had recorded everything, every meeting, every call. The answer to the biggest question in the nation was just sitting there on reels of audio tape. So now the whole investigation becomes a massive battle for these tapes. Nixon fought tooth and nail to keep them secret, but Congress and the courts pushed back, and it led to this huge constitutional crisis. Well, when the Supreme Court finally forced Nixon to hand over the tapes, they found it, the smoking gun. A recording from just a few days after the break-in, where you can hear Nixon himself ordering his staff to use the CIA to stop the FBI's investigation. It was all there, on tape. And let's be super clear here. This wasn't just embarrassing. This was a felony. It's called obstruction of justice. And that tape was the undeniable proof that the President of the United States had committed a crime to cover up another crime. There was no spinning knot. The second that smoking gun tape went public, it was over. Game, set, match. Any support Nixon had, even within his own party, it just evaporated, basically overnight. And you can see here just how fast the end came. On August 8th, 1974, with impeachment a dead certainty, Nixon announces he's going to resign. The very next day, he's gone. Then, a month later, his successor, President Gerald Ford, issues a full pardon.
which meant Nixon would never face any criminal charges for any of it.
And you really have to let that sink in. To this day, Richard Nixon is the one and only U.S. president to ever resign from the job. It was a completely unprecedented end to a presidency that had won in a massive landslide just 2 years before.
But the story doesn't just end with Nixon flying away in that helicopter. This scandal left these deep, permanent marks on America. Marks we can still see today. Afterwards, Congress passed a whole bunch of new laws trying to limit presidential power and make government more transparent. The scandal basically empowered a whole new generation of investigative journalists. But maybe the most important legacy of all, it proved a core principle of the whole American experiment, that the law applies to everyone. No one, not even the president, is above the law. And really, that's the big takeaway here. It's just wild. The whole thing started with a piece of tape on a door lock, a third-rate burglary, and it spiraled until it took down a president. It's a powerful reminder that sometimes the biggest, most earth-shattering scandals begin with the smallest secrets.